In Nossen, Saxony, time seems to have stood still. The good old railroad with its mechanical signal boxes has survived. But passenger trains have not been running here for a long time. The line is only relevant for freight trains now. The former depot is a hive of activity. The IG Dampflok Nossen is at home here, as is Wedler und Franz Logistik, or WFL for short. This company owns a very special steam locomotive, the 18201, computer labeled as 020201-0. Unfortunately, this beautiful three-cylinder engine is not currently firing up steam, but it could be, as it is in excellent condition, and not just visually. Its operational refurbishment was started in Neustrelitz in 2019. Further work is being carried out by WFL in Nossen. The locomotive's resume is extraordinary.
Sie ist 1961 gebaut worden.
It was built in 1961 to test passenger cars in the GDR that could go more than 160 km per hour. These were produced at the time by the RGW, the Council for Mutual Economic Assistance. They didn't have an engine that could go that fast, so they decided in Meiningen to build the locomotive as it stands here today, based on plans by Mr. Baumberg in Halle.
Die Lok so zu bauen, wie sie heute hier steht.
But it is not a new locomotive, because it was created in part from existing vehicles. The engine still originates from the 61002 and the tender from a 44. The cylinders were from the high-pressure locomotive H45024. To this day, there are corresponding markings on the axles that clearly indicate their origin.
Die war viel im Versuchsdienst unterwegs, hat aber auch je nach Bedarf.
It was used a lot in experimental service, but also drove express trains as needed. After reunification, it was owned by the company Dampf Plus, and now it belongs to the company Wedler und Franz. We are very grateful that someone has taken on this locomotive.
Wo wir eigentlich sehr dankbar sind, dass sich noch Leute dieser Lokomotive angenommen haben.
Let's have a look in the past. At the end of 2001, the deadline expired and private operators allowed the engine, which at that time belonged to the DB Museum, to undergo a main inspection in Meiningen. The locomotive returned in 2010. In the process, it was disassembled and even received a new cylinder. Let us take a moment to enjoy this unique engine during a special trip it made together with the 031010. This is what it looks like around the cab of the oil-fired engine. In 1972, it achieved record speed, going 182 km per hour for the Deutsche Reichsbahn of the GDR. Its smooth operation made the locomotive very popular with the personnel, especially compared to the classic Class 01 express locomotives.
Die 8201 ist eine Dreizylinder-Lokomotive und die 01 509 oder wie sie auch immer alle geheißen haben, sind nur Zweizylinder-Lokomotiven. Ja? Nur rechts und links. Und dieses
The 18201 is a three-cylinder locomotive, and the 01, like the 01509 or whatever they may have been called, only had two cylinders, so only right and left. But this three-cylinder engine here brings a certain smoothness to the whole rhythm. The two cylinders out there do what they want anyway, and then the one in the middle calms everything down again. It also happened that the locomotive did not run smoothly and the bearing was knocked out. Then people said, "Oh, we'll leave that for now, we'll go in the next round." And in the end, everything broke down. That was just the way it was. You always had to be a bit careful with things in those days when steam locomotives were the only ones in operation.
Als eben nur Dampfloks gefahren sind.
It is now really time for Göppingen to take on this green locomotive beauty. As a 2023 surprise model, this chic racer will soon grace the half-hour assortment of Märklin and Tricks.
Lokomotiven, von denen es nur ein Stück gibt oder auch in der Vergangenheit.
Locomotives of which there is or was only one unit are something very special, and they radiate that. And when you really stand in front of this one locomotive, it's just wonderful. Admiring looks from the panel of experts. The model comes with a second tender, for good reason.
Später kam ja bei dieser Lokomotive der Zusatztender.
Later, the additional tender was added to this locomotive. Thus, a larger water supply and more oil were required for longer runs. The locomotive could now travel longer distances. In its last years of service, the additional tender was part of its typical appearance. Therefore, it was also clear for us, the additional tender has to be there. The completely new development also cuts a good figure on the layout, even on tight radii. Even the R1 can be run through. The first sample, built from molded parts, is convincing. The model is largely made of metal. A smoke generator is fitted as standard, providing speed-dependent and dynamic smoke output. Several light and sound functions can be activated. The locomotive is powered on 3 axles. Thanks to the many applied details, the model is a feast for the eyes. The buffer height on the locomotive and the tender adheres to the NEM. A must-have dream model for any steam locomotive collection.